Welcome to the Brothers Cast, episode 6. I'm Jacob.
Let's just call this episode 1 because it's got everybody in it now.
Okay, episode 1 of the Brothers Cast. We will start this thing over. What is up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about the election. I'm Jacob. I guess you could say I'm not the person in charge here, but I'm just the person leading the introductions.
You're more of the moderator.
I'm the moderator.
Yeah. And then, so I am Cody, the general news following political pundit / amateur mathematician. Let's do this. I got some good stuff to talk about.
Yeah, and I pretty much have the official credentials of Cody. Just watch a lot of news, read way too much Twitter, all of that nonsense. Waste my life online.
Naturally, we all do. Anyways, this topic is going to be a catch-up of the entire election. We're going to go through a bit of a brief timeline, and then we're just going to basically talk about the entire shit show that's occurred in the last week since we last had an episode, and we're going to talk about as much as we humanly can. So who wants to start?
All right. So I'll give a little bit of a brief rundown. A lot of the stuff for this election started earlier in the year with all of the COVID stuff, and the Democrats decided to, in particular key states, push for mass mail-in voting, which it's actually kind of potentially unconstitutional, but I'll get into that later. So we have this mass mail-in voting. It was a whole fiasco during the primaries. Millions of votes got discounted. Millions of votes were just spammed everywhere. And then we come to the general election, and then kind of a play-by-play. The West Coast, the East Coast is coming in as normal. Florida gets called. And then all of these big states, so your Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, we're all heavily in the lead for Trump. And the counting in the cities just stopped. Right? You were still getting all the rural votes in and all this kind of stuff. We all went to bed. Trump was up 700,000 votes in Pennsylvania. He was up hundreds of thousands of votes in Wisconsin and Michigan. And then everybody woke up, and all of a sudden there was this sudden shift in most of these states of several 100,000 votes just for Biden. As time progressed, states began being called, and there's, some controversy while, Fox News called Arizona while the polls were effectively still open and people were still voting. But now we're in this case where a lot of these states are finally pulling stuff, and Joe Biden has eked ahead barely to 20,000 votes in Wisconsin, about 100,000 votes in Michigan, and it's now approaching 100,000 votes in Pennsylvania. Some of the allegations that are coming out, now there's some small minor ones of postal fraud and all this kind of stuff, but there's some major ones where you have sworn affidavits from people in Detroit that the poll watchers kicked all of the poll places, kicked all the poll workers out at 4 a.m. And then cars showed up with unsealed, unmarked, other than for Joe Biden ballots that didn't have security sleeves, didn't come in the official transportation that they're supposed to be, the official packaging, and they just all went for Biden, and that accounted for the 100,000 vote swing in Michigan. And similar things happened in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, where you also, along with those kind of allegations, you had poll watchers were there at the polls in these cities, particularly in Philly, but they weren't allowed within 6 feet, so they weren't giving meaningful access. They were trying to look at votes, these mail-in votes in particular, because with all mail-in votes and absentee votes, you're supposed to have one Democrat and one Republican poll watcher look at it, verify it, and say it's okay. They weren't giving meaningful access. They went to court that day and said, give us meaningful access. Let us be at least within 6 feet because of COVID. And
practicing extreme social distancing by making people use binoculars.
Yeah, and the polling places said, no. to defy this court order. Now, there are several problems here, and the one that I think is most likely to succeed is the thing about mail-in ballots. So the Constitution specifically dictates, and also, by the way, there were multiple. There were like 2 or 3 Supreme Court rulings that went both ways leading up to this, and one in regards to Pennsylvania was basically like, this is wrong, but we can't make a decision now. Come back to us when it's a problem. Is more or less the decision. Well, now it's a problem. The Supreme Court also told Pennsylvania to segregate any votes that came in after the election day, and they didn't. So there's a whole lot of indices here of, something funky is going on. Even if you don't believe these votes came in from cars that were with out-of-state plates, even though they're sworn affidavits and witness testimony, even if you think that some of these small, the post office backdating a couple votes, it's not that big a deal. The Constitution specifically lays out that the state legislatures are the ones that are required to do mail-in voting. I mean, not new mail-in voting, that are required to set the election laws. And a lot of these states that did the mass mail-in voting, particularly in Pennsylvania, particularly in Michigan, particularly Wisconsin and all this stuff, they didn't. It was the governor and election officials that did it. So also, if in like Pennsylvania, for example, the law dictates that you are required to have a Republican and a Democrat, or and a Libertarian, whatever, a representative from everybody there to be there to count the votes, to make sure that people aren't just scrubbing in mail-in votes, because those are the ones in question. But there were 600,000 votes counted without meaningful access, right? And with the 14th Amendment, so that all combined with the 14th Amendment, which was kind of sort of ruled in the Bush v. Gore fiasco in 2000, that all votes must be treated the same. So if you're giving opportunities in these Democrat areas to go cure votes, which they weren't doing in Republican areas, and you have all these problems, and mail-in votes aren't being treated the same as in-person votes in regards to verification and all this kind of stuff, and then make sure they're getting to the right person, they're coming from the right person, chain of custody, all this, is it constitutionally allowed under the 14th Amendment to happen? And that's one of the big things, aside from the allegations of voter fraud with these sworn affidavits and all this stuff, that they're trying to make right now. Because a lot of these cases, they couldn't get brought up until it became a problem. And also, if Trump won, regardless, he wasn't going to make the case. Now, there are a couple other instances that are being looked at where you have this election software that was accidentally tabulating, gave 6,000 votes to Biden that should have been to Trump. And people are talking about this in 47
Dominion, right?
Yeah, it's used in 47 counties in Michigan, and it's used in one way, shape, or form in 30 different states, specifically all the swing states. And Nancy Pelosi's husband owns part of it. So infer into that what you will. That's kind of a play-by-play where we're going right now. Everything started to slowly creep in and swing, and the counting slowed down, and you're having all of these statistical impossibilities and violation of statistical laws that the world uses to catch voter fraud is violated left, right, and center, and specifically in all these locations that that are being contested. So even if they can't prove voter fraud, most mathematicians and all this kind of stuff, when they honestly look at it right now, they're going, "Wow, this really screams of something artificial happened." Because the law that even just a few years ago, like BBC put out this thing and said, these are the indicators of voter fraud and voter manipulation. One of them was that statistical law that's violated all over the place, and the other one is these delays in counting. And these are the rules that they do, like when they're reviewing elections in Africa with the UN and all that kind of stuff. and I forget what the other one was. And the other one was greater than 100% voter turnout, which is technically possible. Right. All of those have been violated specifically for Joe Biden, specifically in these contested places.
Right.
So, and then you also have the history, and anybody who pays attention to history and kind of backs themselves away from partisan gamery, these big cities, so Las Vegas, Philly, Pittsburgh, Detroit, Milwaukee, and Atlanta and Phoenix are kind of new to the game, but those other cities that I all mentioned all have long histories of corrupt union voting, where they get in, they take over to you come in and you constantly year in, year out have irregularities and things. And, there were Senate hearings in the late 50s where they went, oh my God, this is horrifying. They're so corrupt. They passed laws, and then those laws eventually basically didn't get followed. So for people to say, oh, this isn't, there's no fraud, there's no evidence of fraud. Okay, well, it might not be widespread, but it might be, located in the poll counting places, specifically in these large cities, which have enough to really change a vote if you screw around with them, especially when you count in mail-in voting. Now, it's hard to prove, but it's the saying from Rob Blagojevich, the former, I love saying his name like that, but, the Democrat governor of Illinois that went to prison over corruption, he's like, yeah, this is the stuff they do. And he was like, the old saying was, it's hard to define pornography, but you know it when you see it. Well, it's hard to define voter fraud. You know it when you see it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely no pornography when I see it.
Hey.
Yeah. But there's multiple, definitions that you might be able to give and or describe. But yeah, so that's where we are.
QBs on Netflix.
Yeah, of course you would. It's one of those.
Hey, what do you
mean? You know what I mean. Fucking Jeffrey Epstein wannabe.
Whoa! Hey, these are some.
Kyle, you got any input, good sir?
I guess my only input would be I think it's so incredibly obvious that there was definite voter fraud going on in multiple different levels here. One thing I would like to point out, I think Trump is basically grandstanding right now.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole, we're going to win, all of that stuff, I think that was all an act to prepare people like us to be in the mindset of we have to fight back. I think he knew that those voter fraud was coming and that he was going
they did they were been fighting legal battles all up and down the country leading up once they changed the
so I think there was some rhetorical chess bullshittery going on the whole time from both sides, and everyone knew it was going to get here. And my main worry is that the whole point isn't to figure out who wins between Trump or Biden, but the whole point is to get us to fight each other. To get that they're willing to go into the streets. I think this is all about just.
I think of something very similar, but I don't think it's going to come to fisticuffs. What I think is going to happen is that Trump, at least, and some of his close Republicans have known that election corruption has gone on for, what was the one, 1876? For a long time in this country, especially in the cities where it's super easy to screw around with, and especially with this mail-in balloting stuff. So I think that this is kind of an attempt, especially now that Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell and all that stuff are kind of on board, that this is going to be an attempt to get some sort of legal Supreme Court decision and then force national changes in voting to ensure election security. Because we've been having the voter ID and, purging voter rolls conversation for a long time. And it's always played on these stupid racial games, and there's no real legal case that can be made of, why we can't have voter ID, why you can't purge voter rolls. All we ever get told is voter suppression and racism.
That's all the whole black people can't get IDs, and then
it's like, no, they
what do you mean? Like, I just go down to the DMV. What do you mean I can't?
Yeah, well, I mean that's one of the things. Like, we're one of the only major Western nations that doesn't have strict election laws regarding to ID, residency, and have these kind of chain of custody things where you see in every election for a lot of these Democrats, suddenly they're finding late arriving mail-in ballots and stuff like that. Well, Canada, for a good example, you have if a ballot doesn't show up by election day, it doesn't count, right? Mm-hmm. And I think this Supreme Court ruling under, if they'll probably take it up, and I think what they're going to do is establish fair election guidelines, because you know what? Republicans probably fuck with the vote too. I mean, Project Veritas exposed somebody paying somebody to go out and have them vote for him, but for Biden.
Oh, yeah,
right?
What the hell was that?
Because a lot of establishment Republicans don't like Trump. They want to keep the status quo. Trump is typical, like George Bush, Mitt Romney, Republicanism, and Trump is trying to change them to economic populists, because that's what Trump was.
That it was just basically a rhino who was just like pretending to be a Republican and then still playing the cheating game.
There are some people that would have been, House reps that know their shit is safe, that would have rather had Biden as a president. I mean, that's how you see New Hampshire going, in Vermont, where their state legislatures and governor went Republican, but they went heavily for Biden. There are just some people that only watch normal mainstream news, and they hate Trump. That's Biden's vote wasn't for Biden; it was anti-Trump. You're already starting to see turnings of that on Twitter and social media and these protests, which say, "Fuck you, Biden. We just didn't like Trump."
Right? And he's like, "What?"
Yeah. So
I thought I was the great unifier. I thought everybody loved me.
Even though you were calling people lying dog-faced pony soldiers and all this stuff, and I honestly think it's going to be a huge, because other parts of the election, right, is like pretty much down ballot. Democrats got their ass kicked. They're probably not going to gain the Senate. They're probably the best that they can hope for is 50-50, right? But then you also have like Joe Manchin, who's basically a union Republican that runs as a Democrat, who's already said, I'm not voting for all of this court packing shit. I'm not voting for all of this other BS. And that's my biggest worry, is the court packing one. And he, like, this dude and like one of the other, more center-right Democrats, there's few of them left, the Blue Dog ones, have all said, like, I'm not voting for this shit. So I really don't think it's going to be as easy as they say. And also the House, like Jacob and I were just looking at this. Right now, the Democrats, it's at 218 to 205, and 218 is the you need 218 for a majority, a one vote majority. And most of the other races look like they're leaning Republican or very, very close. So the forecast says 225 to like 205 or 225 to 210 or something like that. So the House is going to be, especially if it ends up to 218 to 217, I will shit a brick.
There's no way.
I don't think it's going to be that close. It was probably going to be like 220 to 213 or something like that, but the Republicans actually gained a whole lot. They lost Colorado, they lost Arizona in the Senate, but then they kept Maine, they picked up Alabama, they picked up a couple of these other ones, and they might have only lost a net of one seat because Arizona is being infected by Californians.
Yeah, it is.
But statewide, the Republicans crushed it down ballot, and now they hold the state legislatures in 29 different states going into a redistricting year.
Right, and I don't know much about how the redistricting works. Like, who actually handles the drawing of the lines and redistricting?
It depends, but it all leans on the laws that are set by the state legislatures, right? So some states, like California, has like an independent board that does it. That's got like Republicans, Democrats, and concerned citizens, and there's like 4 of all 3 groups.
So they're all Democrats.
Yeah, but California Republicans are a little weird. Like you and I are California Republicans, so
yeah.
But the 29 different states, so a lot of them, it's that whole like gerrymandering conversation, and it's all going to be based off the census, and it's going to be pretty interesting, especially since if they got Amy Coney Barrett into the Supreme Court, which they did, and then a non-majority Democrat Senate, a non-really big majority Democrat House, because a lot of these centrists don't want to do all this socialist crap because they almost lost their seats because of it, and then I'm going to say 5-4 because Justice Roberts is a piece of shit. But a 5-4, conservative bench that with a lot of originalists on it, you're gonna see the Biden presidency restrained. But there are certain things that he can do that I don't like bringing back critical race theory in the federal administration.
I think you're getting ahead. Just in case, first and foremost, got to talk about the possible scenarios of what's going to happen.
Okay, yeah. Let's reel back there. Possible scenarios.
First and foremost, let's talk about the first scenario where everything just is what it is. Nothing comes back from it, and Biden wins. Then
I think most likely. Yeah, I honestly think that's the most likely scenario where we are. I don't.
That doesn't mean that I think that Biden won fair and square. I think there was definitely cheating. I think if it was only legal votes, that Trump would definitely win. I'm just not on the side of that's more likely to happen. I don't think he'll get all of the legal victories that he needs to have only legal votes counted.
Yeah, but I definitely think that what I've said with that is I think Biden wins, but the Supreme Court says like puts down a big ruling, and then over the next 2 and 4 years, we're going to see a lot of lawsuits that change election laws in a bunch of these states. That's the most likely case. The second case is that Trump gets a bunch of votes thrown out in Pennsylvania, wins Pennsylvania, and then somehow pulls ahead in because he still needs Arizona and Georgia to flip in order to do that. It's not just Pennsylvania, but you have very similar legal things. If that sets a legal precedent about mail-in votes, you might get mail-in votes thrown out across the country, right? And that's the big thing. If it's just the throw out the ones that we weren't able to watch, and that's what it's going to be. So there, that'll set legal precedent for more lawsuits of we didn't watch these many 100,000 votes here and there, and that would set precedent. And it's be like, okay, well, if you guys kick people out, because that also happened in Austin, Texas. There's lawsuits going on from local people there right now, criminal investigations going into it. Then that's gonna cause mass chaos, and Trump wins.
Isn't that from Veritas as well?
That one's not from Veritas. That one's from a local news agency that I was watching the other day.
Okay.
The second scenario is that he lawfares it and keeps everything tied up repeatedly in court, not allowing the stuff to be certified, and it goes to Congress, which is House delegations. Each state gets one vote, and he's got more states and more individual states that he won, I believe.
Now, do you think that vote will go along party lines and Trump would win? Or do you think that some people would basically vote to keep the peace, believing in good faith that Biden actually won the election and would elect Biden?
That's a good question. Cody?
I'm counting, hold on.
Personally, I don't know. It depends. I think most people in the House specifically are probably understanding of the reality that Trump kind of really helped get them the vote to begin with. So they might be more.
Here's the weird thing. If I'm counting this right now, so say if the states decided to go, we're just going to send our delegation for the number of states that won. Trump right now has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25 states. And that's not counting Arizona or Georgia, which haven't been called. That's not counting Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, and all this stuff.
So basically even on states if everything stays the same.
Yes.
Okay.
But I do think there are more Republican legislatures that own it that would be like, yeah, we want the Republican.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt if it goes down that scenario, Trump would win. But a lot would have to happen in order for that scenario to really occur.
He would basically win. I don't think so, because he would need Georgia to somehow flip back for him. If I pull up the 2020 Electoral College map, in order for him to get to 60, he needs Georgia. So he needs Georgia. He actually just needs Georgia and Pennsylvania with that combo, and he wins.
Right.
Wait, you're talking about just the Electoral College?
Just the Electoral College right now.
Oh, okay, my bad. I'm talking about just the House vote if it went down to that path.
I don't know. That's a good question.
I don't know who makes those decisions and how many of them are likely to be never Trumpers or moderates who just want to keep the peace. I don't know if we could that as a definite Trump win if it goes to House delegation.
Yeah, I mean, I think his biggest thing is these recounts. And people are like, oh, recounts normally never swap more than like 200 votes. I'm like, yeah, well, most recounts aren't dealing with these massive numbers of mail-in votes, especially when you have these cities, in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, where they spoiled a whole lot of the votes. So in a recount, if this vote is spoiled and you don't know what to do with it, what happens? Right? And that's going to be a big question, is like, okay, what happens if, there's 500,000 votes in Pennsylvania where they just remove the security sleeves, you can't verify it, you can't verify the signature, you can't verify that these people live and work here, which is part of a recount. What do you do with those votes? And that was one big thing that drew out, like, okay, this is, they were doing something funky, is because in Pennsylvania, they, threw out in these mail-in votes, they got rid of all the security sleeves and they weren't supposed to. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So that's definitely what makes you go. I think the people that choreographed the mail-in voting thing wanted it to get to this point.
Oh, absolutely.
Because there was no way that our system was going to be able that, or they thought there would be just so many votes in mail-in that they would crush Trump regardless.
Well, this was their backup scenario, in my opinion. I mean, this is literally the worst case scenario.
Backup, and they were hoping that it would just be a clear Biden win.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
they wouldn't.
I hope that was the desire. I hope that the desire was that they were actually trying to make Biden win. My worry is that, the big, dark, smoke-filled room where all of the people pulled the strings, that what they wanted is exactly what's happening right now, and that they don't really care who wins the election. They just want us to be fighting with each other.
Because
I'm worried that there is I'm worried that there's like Chinese influence on both sides that are basically how does China really care who wins this election? They don't play on the 4-year scale; they play on the 40-year scale. So they don't really care who's in office temporarily. When they know that
I think they do right now because they're drastically close to economic collapse.
I think they would definitely prefer Biden, but I don't know how close they are.
I don't think they're really. From what I've been reading, and I don't read as much of them as I do with us, obviously, but they are very, very close to some kind of economic collapse. I mean, you saw it yourself when Trump was winning. The value of the yuan was plummeting.
Yeah.
So
that was funny.
I kind of think that because Biden wants to get back into TPP, which I think if he does, he like going into the future, he loses Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania for them for the future. Right?
There's no way these Democrats are winning re-election.
Well, I mean, but the problem is if we don't get some sort of slapdown, even if Trump loses, if we don't get some sort of slapdown on election rigging and all this kind of stuff in these cities and create some kind of institutional change in our election, we're gonna have problems. Right, the Democrats will still keep winning, or Republicans will still keep winning, and you'll never see any sort of big change. So that's what I'm honestly hoping for. At the very least, is that the Supreme Court goes in and says these are the standards constitutionally that we can tell that you guys need to apply to your voting system. And that they say something about in the future mass mail-in voting is unconstitutional, change it, and sets basically a requirement for chain of custody and all this shit, because you've had historic legacies of Democrats in places, specifically Philly, rigging elections, right? Even if it's just small local elections. It doesn't have to be widespread if it's one particular place in Detroit that is swinging.
Population center.
Yeah. Right, because, it's like in Nevada, they used to call it the Harry Reid voting machine, right? Because he was a Nevada senator, and Las Vegas was always a huge union town, and they're losing union power. And that's why you see it be so close right now, and I definitely think, you have all these cases. Oh, look at these thousands of dead people that voted. Why aren't the voter rolls purged? Oh, these people left town and then moved. Why are they still on the voter rolls? Why aren't voter rolls getting, purged and people re-registering every election?
Okay, how about this right now, hypothetically? What states do you guys think are the most likely to flip within the next couple of weeks?
Wisconsin, Georgia, and Arizona. Wisconsin is and Nevada. So
Wisconsin's well within the voter margin.
They're about 20,000 off. Arizona's about 12,000 off. Nevada's about 20,000 off. Georgia's within 10,000. If those all flipped on recounts and those all flipped on that stuff, that turns into 275. Even.
That's a pretty big flip on recounts alone. I think it'll depend on at least a little bit of lawfare in certain states.
Yes.
The odds of legitimate votes being counted correctly and then being counted again and making that much difference in all of those states is incredibly unlikely.
Right, and then you throw into the screwball. So you throw into the screwball the tabulation process with that software, where these glitches were giving 6,000 Trump votes to Biden. So
that's true. Taking that into account, it's not that unlikely that.
Especially with the massive numbers of mail-in votes, because in Wisconsin you have the case where Wisconsin state law says that if you get these votes, if you have a mail-in vote, absentee vote comes in, it doesn't have a witness statement signed on it, you set it aside, and you count it later. So a couple different districts in the Democrat areas, the county commissioner, the election commissioners told the people, the poll workers, to violate state law and fill in on their own witness statements and addresses and stuff, and basically put themselves on it. And they did it in red pen, is what they were told to do, and then they just counted the vote. So if you do the recount in Wisconsin, and then somebody goes, what the fuck is this? That's potentially thousands of votes that could get taken away. So when you're looking at, it's a 20,000 point thing, I mean, we've never seen this level of mail-in vote. We haven't seen this level
earlier today. I heard earlier today that there was a glitch in that same software in Wisconsin that switched almost 20,000 Trump votes to Biden. So with just that glitch alone being accounted for, Trump should be in the lead. Yeah, but they haven't accounted for that, and they haven't recognized it. That was the Gateway pundit looking at numbers and going, "Why?" So we'll see. But this is why I say I don't think Trump is winning. I want to see where these lawsuits come out, because the constitutionality of mass mail-in voting is going to be tested, because that's the thing. Under the 14th Amendment, they ruled partially in Bush v. Gore, which said all votes have to be treated the same. So I see them saying any votes, basically all votes have to show up in the future on election day. No votes that show up later can count. That I think that's definitely going to happen. And then I think, it's going to be established some base ground rules on mail-in votes that are going to make it extremely hard for these cities and these places in the future to screw with this stuff. Right. Not anything more than like a few votes. I don't think it'll be possible next election. Yeah. Oh yeah. They're going to be legally fucked. Yeah, I mean, because then you're going to come in, and then next election, if you have these votes showing up later, because everyone's like, oh, suppression of voter. Well, this gets into, if you're not securing the vote, aren't you suppressing the vote of everybody in the losing party because you didn't verify? You're suppressing everybody's vote if the vote's not secure. Anything but a true count of everyone who actually voted is voter suppression for whoever ends up losing. Well, I mean, one of the things that I love is so Georgia in 2015 or something, early 2016, they did a mass purge of 200,000 people off their voter rolls. And then you get these liberals that came in and they were like, oh, these far lefts, oh, they just purged a whole bunch of, black people, it was targeted black people, and it's no, they actually set out the guidelines. It was targeted people they thought were dead or had moved. And then all of them bring up this one particular thing where this 92-year-old woman that's been going to the same polling place for 50 years came in, and they said she was no longer on the thing, and it's well, no, I am. It's okay, well, two things. One, she probably got purged because she was in her fucking 90s and they thought she was dead. Sorry. That's what it was. And two, why do we not have the civic duty requirements in the country anymore to make sure you're registered before you, in the lead up to the election? And why is it that a story of one little old lady accidentally getting purged from voter rolls a bigger story in the mainstream media than thousands of dead people voting for Joe Biden? That particular one was from 2016. But yeah, I mean, there's no proof of widespread voter fraud. But if 20,000 votes in Nevada are jacked up, that's 20,000 suppressed votes of other people. Right.
Mm-hmm. What do you guys think? So, what's okay?
No, keep going.
What do you guys think is going to happen in both Pennsylvania first and then Michigan then?
I think it's too hard to even form an opinion of what's going to happen. I think we could throw out a couple potential what could happen, but I don't think I could actually make a call on what's most likely. I think there's too many variables.
I mean, the potentials,
just some
like
potential.
you lose Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, and Arizona, and Nevada from the election. Because these are so, like, there's so many in particular lawsuits with this. This is heads and tails above what it was like in 2000, where it took 38 days, right? So you have, so you have Pennsylvania, you have the constitutionality of mail-in voting, of these separate things, not treating the votes the same. You also have you counted 650,000 ballots without adequate representation from the Republicans, and you got rid of all of these, you didn't segregate them, which is in direct violation of the Supreme Court order from Justice Alito to segregate the ballots.
Right. What's the consequence of that? Like,
I don't know. The Supreme Court, that one right there is why I say the Supreme Court could go throw out all of the ballots that were counted without people. You guys didn't segregate.
What power does a single Supreme Court justice actually have? Are they able to actually do that and have it be meaningful?
I mean, if they deem it they're the supreme, law, pretty much the supreme law of the land of deciding if something's legal and constitutional.
I guess one could look at it as like a bit of a federal court order. I mean, they're literally, if you're a Supreme Court justice, you are the highest federal judge in the country. So at the very least, it would seem like a federal court order at the very least to do that. And for them to not do that, since at least in this case, if anything that's not allotted to the states goes to the federal government, whatever you want to call it, with the 10th Amendment, yada yada, or the opposite of the 10th Amendment. I don't know what the hell happened with all that.
Well, right.
That was really strange.
And it all plays into the 14th Amendment because that one in particular, that was like the Reconstruction era amendments about protecting minorities' voting rights. So everybody needs to have the same voting stuff. So if you're having people turn these mail-in ballots after the election, like, that's ridiculous. If you're receiving mail-in ballots after the election, these drop boxes and all this stuff, that's ridiculous. And that's why in some of these states, with the Project Veritas stuff, where they have people that are from the post office coming in and saying, we got told, or people were collecting all the ballots and then and then dating them for the 3rd instead of the 4th or 5th when they came in. That's a big issue, right? I mean, and that's why personally, I don't think mail-in, I don't think mail-in balloting or even really absentee balloting, absentee balloting, sure, like if you're military or something like that is okay. Like if you're going to be out of state on business, but you should have to like specifically request it and have a good reason. But I don't think that this. I think we will never again see this mass mail-in system, regardless of pandemic or not.
Unless the left continues to win court battles.
I don't know. See, that's the thing. If they don't pack the Supreme Court, depending on how this goes, we could see something here that delineates Trump, you lose, shithead states get your voting fixed. And here's another factor in with that. Think about the voter participation. So let's assume they faked the vote, right? Let's assume right now that there was some kind of fraud,
which I honestly believe there was.
Right. So in Pennsylvania, look at the record turnout you would have just had for Republicans. How many new active pissed off Republicans or Trump supporters did you just make by in your state? You have all of these people that are, because screw it, California, Washington, Oregon, Virginia, New York, and all these places think in these specific state elections, how many pissed off Trump supporters did you just make? How many pissed off MAGAites did you just make? Right? 2.7 million in Pennsylvania, 2 million in Michigan, and if
I think there might be a difference between Trump supporters and MAGA Knights, as you put it. I think there is a generous portion of voters who legitimately don't like Trump and don't want to vote for him because of the tweeting and the orange man bad. Maybe they have faulty news sources, but they still have the right values. I think if they were given the right candidate that wasn't basically a braggadocious, bloviating asshole,
yes,
that they would be a lot more willing to come out and vote for a good character with the right principles.
Right, but you're not wrong. But think about the support he did get in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Now,
no, it's ridiculous.
Now, if you've pissed off every single one of these voters, and the Republicans do what they just said they were going to do, which is continue economic populism, which is pretty much why all these people came out and voted for him. Right, the idea of help us, don't screw us economically with trade deals and shit in these big, manufacturing and industry towns.
Right, people aren't as ignorant to those issues as they used to be. They have sources online, and you can't just feed them the fancy buzzwords on the media and have everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I remember
learn the dangers of TPP on their own.
Yeah, but like 2 points with that, I'll say I just think you're going to see drastic changes in those, in particular, those 3 states. In regards to they're going to pressure. Most of them have Pennsylvania has Republican everything but the governor. So I think we're going to see Republican governors come in there. I think we're going to see at least with all of these pissed off people, because there's going to be some portion of people that voted for Joe Biden in there that are going, what the hell is going on with this election? Like, cool, I'm glad we won, but what the hell is going on with these elections? That it's going to cause
be the low info voters. I saw stuff about people who didn't know that Biden wanted to shut down the country again. At least he didn't pay enough attention, but now maybe you're paying attention, and maybe now you'll see. Yeah, he does want to shut down the country. And
I've even seen. Well, Biden wants to bring back. Fuck, AOC just tweeted this bullshit, but I want to see. They're like, Biden's going to stop wars, stop sending our troops overseas. It's like, do you know what Biden did the last time he was in the White House? We ran out of bombs. We literally ran out of bombs.
So, question actually, real quick. First, hypothetically, because it's not decided yet, if Biden wins the election, what will happen? And then what will Trump do in response to Biden winning the election?
Kyle, you want to go first?
Well, do you mean what will Trump do as a legal response, or
what will he do as a former president?
Yes. Run again in 2024, Trump TV, which would be magnificent.
Oh, God.
I think Trump TV is fairly likely. I don't think he'll run again in 2024. I just think by that time he'll be old enough that it's really going to start taking a toll on him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think all the cocaine that he snorts right now is going to keep him with the energy that he's doing.
It's Dayquil.
Okay. Okay. I'm pretty sure it's cocaine.
Regular.
Don't get me wrong. I'm perfectly okay with the fucking 74-year-old man snorting cocaine while he's running, to run the country so he stays up. But
I just want to see Donald Trump's messages back and forth to Hunter Biden before each rally that he has, because I think there is some exchanges going on there involving cocaine and money. So just
I mean,
Trump and Hunter Biden connection.
Yeah, I think. Well, so what I think happens is, so if Biden wins, Trump becomes kingmaker for the Republicans because he had 97% approval rate for the Republicans, and you already saw Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell both kind of come out and say, we're shifting to economic populism because of how popular Trump was. I think this is something our voter base wants. This is what we need to swap to, screw all the old shit. We can keep our basic bitch conservativeness, but
Not for long, bitches.
Yeah, we're gonna do that. But I'd love to see Trump TV. I'd love him to pull Hannity, Tucker, Judge Jean Pirro. And I'd love to see him. I'd love to see him pull Steven Crowder, but I don't think Crowder's leaving the Blaze. And then I'd love to see them do, basically crush Fox News into the ground.
That'd be awesome too if Timmy somehow got on Trump TV too, just because.
He won't. Like, I liked Tim Pool, but Tim Pool is an arrogant liberal twat waffle.
Yeah, he needs to be on his own. He needs to have no boss.
Yeah, he won't. He's like one of the. So I like a lot of Tim Pool's content, but then whenever he brings someone on that challenges him a little bit, he folds like a fucking aluminum can. Like, he had on that Vosh guy, and he folded left and right. Because he
folds. I think he's more interested in exploring that person's opinion more than proving that person's opinion wrong.
I agree, but there are certain things, like, if you're trying to really explore a person's opinion. So, like, the guy he had on today, they were talking about the election fraud, and he barely pushed back on this guy, because this guy was like, "Oh, there's no widespread fraud. There's no widespread fraud," and he doesn't go, "Okay, there's no widespread fraud, but what if the fraud is specific to these population centers and these key polling areas, and it's enough to swing the election?" And then, because you need to, like, when you're exploring someone's opinion, you really need to push back on that kind of thing to try and make them, effectively explore their stuff.
Yeah, maybe I'm being too apologetic for Tim. Possible.
Don't get me wrong.
I think there's
I'm still
value in letting them explore their ideas, and there's also value in challenging their ideas.
No. I agree. I agree. But
you don't want to be Chris Wallace during the debate with Trump. Like, that's just awful. So
no. I mean, I don't disagree. Sorry, I dropped my thing. I just see. His interview, like, I love his coverage and all that kind of stuff. Just with his interviews, I don't see them as really doing the service sometimes that it needs to do if he's going to bring in people that, like, disagree with him on some of these stances, because he's not conservative. He doesn't have those kind of ideas. He's just kind of like anti-democrat.
Well, I don't think he's trying to be a debater either. He's not trying to come in and have a fight. He's more of a journalist. So it's kind of more his personal duty to explore that person's ideas and not make them defend one or two particular ideas. Whereas if he were to go on Ben Shapiro, it might be a different story.
Mm-hmm. No, I don't.
Like, vouch on
I don't disagree.
That would be a bloodbath. Or vouch with Crowder, because Crowder has that role Skylar Turden, which is basically vouch. Is it vouch or vosh?
Vosh.
Vosh. Okay, but it's Skylar Turden is 100% vosh. If anyone ever listens to this, just go look up Crowder's Skylar Turden and vosh. It is uncanny.
So basically, if Biden wins, it's just going to be 4 years of just gridlock in a lame duck presidency with Trump TV being Trump. Would that basically
Trump TV would take a little bit to start up, but I think...
I don't know. I don't think it would take that long.
I think he would have to do massive sell-offs of his other world. Of his other stuff.
Create a channel that people will actually watch. Like,
you have to get syndicated.
Access to. You have all of these people who are willing to join the right media organization, if it's headed by Trump, who have all of the recording equipment and everything you could ever need. They could start it tomorrow.
Yeah.
And start broadcasting.
I don't disagree.
We're just random dudes sitting here broadcasting from different locations with microphones and laptops. Like,
right.
Art. And if we have the names that Trump has access to, people would watch.
Trump
apparently, side note, apparently in order to win the runoffs in Georgia, there's thousands of leftists saying that they're moving to Georgia to vote in the next month. Because their residency requirements are like, oh, you only have to be here like a month.
We're a little country.
He is literally in Georgia right now looking at houses and stuff so that they can live there
for a day.
I really hope that they're just going to get swarmed by leftists like locusts. Like hippies.
I think that entire state for the next month is going to be just an absolute onslaught of political ads and money being spent.
My dad is just going to turn into Hank Hill if somebody asked him for a well-done steak. Oh.
Okay. Now, let's say the hypothetical and very small chance, but potential chance that Trump somehow pulls this out, whether or not he wins it with recounts or, it goes to the House, and the House basically is just like, screw it, we'd rather have Trump rather than Biden. What do you think will happen if Trump hypothetically gets his second term?
Well, that's almost the outcome that I'm most afraid of.
California secedes.
I don't know if they secede. I don't know if there's that much political shift. I think there is going to be social outcry, and I think we're going to see a lot more violence than we saw after the fucking George Floyd protest.
Undoubtedly. But I think there's
going to be considerable amounts of violence, and
you saw the millions of people that poured out into the streets in a lot of these places to go, yay, Biden won on Saturday, right? Despite COVID, despite all this stuff, and all I think if Trump somehow pulls it off, Los Angeles burns, New York burns, Portland burns, Seattle burns. But I think one of the things that you will see is in a lot of these places with these riots over the summer, you had these governors and mayors that weren't willing to lay down the hammer because of politics. So I think that if this stuff happens, and I also think that's going to play an effect in future elections, but I'll get to that. But I think if you see Trump somehow win and New York City starts getting destroyed, they're going to they're going to unleash the cops. Right? Because they're not going to care anymore.
Biden administration?
What's that?
Or you're assuming that's a Trump win, they'll unleash the cops?
Yes. If riots happen because Trump wins, I think they unleash the cops. Because so Seattle, for example, the mayor of Seattle let the Chaz go on until they came to her house. And then, the following weekend, Chaz was destroyed. In Kenosha, as soon as the mayor realized and the governor realized, oh god, this place is super close and this stuff's not working after the Jacob Blake shooting, they unleashed the cops. Right? So I think if these governors and mayors and stuff no longer are trying to win the political partisan battle of making Trump look bad because his America is getting destroyed,
right?
They're just going to be like, okay, tear gas them, because everybody forgets that's what happened under Obama with BLM and Ferguson.
Or are they more likely to protest even stronger against Trump and say that he's an illegitimate president who stole the election through the courts, and they're not going to cooperate with his desires against people speaking out for freedom?
I think you have enough of these people that understand that if they let another round of rioting go, their economic prospects in their area is going to collapse.
Yeah, but that's what they want. They want the economy to collapse so that they can have justification for redistribution of wealth.
I think Bill de Blasio does in New York. right? But Cuomo doesn't.
That far off.
I don't think Cuomo does not, because he was pleading for the rich people to come back because of their tax problem.
Maybe.
And then I think the same thing in what's that?
He's an intelligent psychopath.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think you'll see in a lot of these places that they are gonna have, because with the Democrats, what I've noticed in my time being politically aware, it's rules for thee, but not for me. They, like with the wall, all the Democrats voted for border fencing and basically to do what Trump wanted to do like 1,500 times in the last 20 years alone. And then once Trump said, let's build a wall, they're like, no. When it came to deportations and the cages and family separation and being anti-illegal immigration, the Democrats even subvertly were going, yeah, okay, whatever, cool, that's actually a good idea because of unions, which are a real political power base. And all that kind of stuff. They were they did it when they were in charge. Same thing with the bombing. Oh, screw you! You can't do this, and then we're gonna go and we're gonna do it worse. So if they no longer have the political willpower, the political necessity and a need to be for the rioters, because they'll be all about the protest, but once it breaks into a riot, shit's gonna go down like that. Yeah. Oh, I think as soon as Biden gets in Antifa and then start rioting again.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I think so too. I don't think that the Democrats played them right.
Well, I don't think they know what they're dealing with.
Right. I think they're kind of in denial. They think that these are just people who are really politically active, who have the same base values as us. And it's like, no, you're centrist. You're trying to see where it blows. And these people are violent psychopaths who want to destroy the country so that they can take over because they're mentally damaged. These are not the same people,
they also
each other politically.
Well, also the BLM thing, right? Like the actual BLM group is a Marxist organization. They admit it. That's not a hidden secret.
They're playing the Marxist game, and they're just wearing a little BLM hood.
Right. Well, I mean, those people, the three female founders of BLM before they were running the BLM as an organization, right? Because
them have ever had a healthy relationship with
father? They ran the communist conventions in America with money funded to them from Venezuela. That's undisputed fact. If you go in and you look up commie-cons and you look at who was running them, and then you look at where the money came from.
It's like Comic-Con, but it would smell even worse.
Yes, much, much worse, and with a lot more, people pissed off that they weren't getting free stuff.
Somehow uglier.
Yeah, so somehow just even more horrifying. But yeah, you get these commie, they literally were running communist conventions in America. So yeah, like people like what's that? This guy that I watch, Your Favorite Sociologist, did a video on it.
Favorite sociologist?
Yeah, okay. On YouTube. If basically he's like he pulled up a couple websites, and I'm like, all right, I'm convinced enough of this as being real. Because when I watched it, like the sources were good. But it's also not hard to believe because they literally said originally we're trained Marxists.
Where do you go for Marxist training?
What's that?
Where do you go for Marxist training?
College.
Oh yeah, the university system. That's right.
I'm taking a sociology class right now, and whenever it comes to like the three main theoretical theories on sociology, you always have like 1 page each for the other two, and then you have 4 pages of Marxist conflict theory.
Of course.
And it's hilarious. It's just hilarious to me because I'm like, no, you're not biased.
My big theory of why Marxism is popular in the university system is because it sounds really smart. Like it's a really good way to present like you know what the fuck you're talking about. Deconstructionism, everything that branches out of Marxism. It's a really good way to pretend like you're smart. And since colleges have been accepting more and more and more students every year, you know, more and more people entering the university system. So it's this dominant structure of people who aren't very bright, who don't know what the fuck they're talking about, who just really need to feel intelligent. So they have this whole deconstructionist thing where they're just really good at poking holes in other systems, but they don't actually have any good ideas. They're not creating anything. They're not understanding anything complex. They're just like, well, I see a problem here, and now I sound smart. It's just like, oh, you've let too many idiots into the system, and now
the way they talk. Well, so that's kind of true, kind of not true. The universities long time ago were taken over by Soviets. Like this, and this isn't like conspiracy hidden knowledge. Like when the Soviet papers were leaked,
underground shit, right?
Well, when the Soviet papers were leaked at the fall of and declassified, the fall of the Soviet Union and all that kind of stuff, they realized there were people that came over with the intention of running and warping media, running and warping colleges. I mean, we had Nazis come over and start teaching, and they got into academia. Like that's not knowledge, and like those ideologies are collectivist ideologies, right? Like
same thing with the Chinese and the Vietnamese and the Viet Cong. There's a bunch of sleeper cells somewhere in this country still, probably. So yeah.
No, but I mean it's even less like it's like there's literal proof when you go and you read the papers that were released and all this stuff. Like they had people so high up in the English and American governments that they were intercepting transmission in World War II between FDR and Churchill, and that was in the 40s.
Soviets?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That was in the 40s. So the Soviets didn't fall till the 90s. They were getting people over here, and they were putting them in media. They were putting them in academia. So it's not.
But the ideology did not.
Yeah. So like they died out. Yeah, that's exactly the way I put it. They died out. The ideology didn't. It's just little ripples in a pond.
Little ripples in a big pond that amplify when they're focused correctly.
Right, and so the big reason why Marxism is so popular is because when you really read Marxism, it's heavily reliant on materialistic culture. So it's got two things. I'm going to read one of these straight out of the book right here. It's inequalities in wealth and power that arise from the economic system. And when it's talking about what deviance arrives from, right? This is my sociology textbook, right? So they always play it as like inequalities in wealth and power, and that people are specifically attached to like the materials that they work on and that they make. This was like created back like with factories and stuff like that.
Revolution.
Yeah, during the Industrial Revolution, 1850s, and all that kind of stuff. So it's heavily reliant on that society is based around materialism, and it's based on that inequality in power and wealth. And then when you look at a lot of these like middle class people that are flooding colleges and going for easy degrees, or even the people I'm doing engineering stuff and I have to take this class, right? It gets the perspectives in them are very much heavily lean towards it's super easy rationally to fall down that rabbit hole. Because you have a lot of these people like I'm well off, but I'm not rich, and they don't appreciate what they have. Because the middle class in America, and especially in the 90s in our generation, which are the ones that are causing this problem, were very, very fairly well off because it was during the .com boom. It was before we had multiple wars and collapses of like the real full collapse of manufacturing, and all of this kind of stuff. So yeah, it's super easy to convince people that weren't rich but don't understand the value of labor, that everything is material, like that society is materialistic and the people, and it's all a power struggle between the proletariat and the bourgeoisie. It's very, very easy to convince people of that.
And I think Marx did make certain good points. Like, he had decent critiques of the system, but he kind of used that to catapult his solutions as credible.
Right. I mean, he's got a very good system very good critique, which is not a very good system, horrible system. But he's got a very good critique, which is if the elites and the wealthy start taking too much, basically they start taking too much, and there's not enough of normal life for the rest of us, that power struggle happens. That's very true. I mean, the French Revolution is fucking proof of it.
Right, and I remember having that same idea for myself, like, independently from anything when I was non-political, when I was, like, maybe just over 20. I basically came up with that same idea, and that's why I ended up being a left-leaning person for a few years, because, like, that just sounded kind of natural to me. So I'm like, oh, great, this guy that's regarded by the entire political left as, like, this great genius is the same guy that came up with the ideas that I had when I was completely politically retarded in my early 20s.
Yeah, before you started, like,
the great being.
Before you started working hard.
Like, those ideas are really bad.
Yeah.
It wasn't even about working hard. It was, at that time, like, I was working a decently, somewhat difficult job, but it was more like, I didn't factor in scarcity to my understanding of economics. So basically I was like, as all of this production comes out, the majority of the wealth is always filtered to the top, and therefore what's going to happen when the wealthy hoard too much and the bottom 99% don't have enough to have a functionally stable economy?
Well, I mean, that's, to me, I think that's still a problem, right? I still think wealth inequality is a problem.
It sounds possible, but that just that essentially didn't factor in scarcity, where I was like, as more and more money focuses at the top, the dollar will stretch a little bit more at the bottom, and it'll kind of balance out inflation a little bit. So it was just kind of an ignorant view, but
yeah, I mean, like, you saw, like, way early on, people were, when they were talking about shutting down the economy, and these people were like, if shutting down the economy just saves a single life, I don't care about greed. It's like, dude, the economy isn't just greed. It's the transfer and the movement of goods and supplies. If you shut down the economy, you shut down getting food to the store. You shut down getting electricity. You shut down,
people going to work, and these people don't understand psychology. They're just stupid, and they're like, oh my god, we need to protect ourselves from diseases. It's like, oh wow, you're hypersensitive to diseases, just like the Nazis tended to be. That's weird, and I wonder where that correlation factors in. But anyway.
Well, yeah, I mean, I could go on long rants. Like, I love when people like fascists or right-wing. It's like, no. The fascists and their primary documents, Mr. wannabe academic, the primary documents, primary sources, the people that created the fascist ideology were all about collectivism and the socialism, a new type of socialism for that collective to make them better. That's why they heavily focused on their primary identity group and excluded everybody else. And that's why these radical leftists have been trying to create an identity group out of everybody that is non-white. Right, they've been, the BIPOC, Black and Indigenous people of color. They've been trying to do everything they can to gather everybody non-white into one collective group, and then say, we need to do everything that's good for this collective group off of the backs of everybody else.
Now they're mad that the Hispanics are starting to lean towards Trump, and they're just like, no, you aren't people of color anymore. And I'm like, oh my god, this is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I really think, now this kind of goes to the future, what I see the very best ticket that the Republicans can run in 2024, regardless of who wins this year, is gonna be Ted Cruz and either Tim Scott or Kristi Noem.
That's hard to argue against.
Yeah,
I still like Crenshaw because of his ability to appeal to everyone, whereas Ted Cruz can come off as kind of to certain groups.
But think about how much more that would cement sinking in, getting at least a 50-50 split in the Hispanic community. If you run, because I mean, this goes back to my old conspiracy theory of the reason why Trump got so much free coverage during the nomination process was because Ted Cruz was winning, and the Republicans loved Ted Cruz. And if Hillary Clinton was going to go up against somebody and their entire thing is calling the other party racist, how much harder is that to call a Cuban man racist?
So how many votes do they get on account of Ted Cruz being, at least by name, Hispanic?
I mean, his dad was a Cuban immigrant.
That way. Right, but nobody sees.
But right? They're gonna play it up. He's gonna play it up in all the national everything. You know?
I don't know if people like that political disingenuous crap that people play.
But what I think it's going to be as simple as, I'm Ted Cruz. I'm the son of a Cuban immigrant, and this is what I believe. And it's going to be simple as saying I'm the son of a Cuban immigrant. The son of a Cuban.
So you don't think he'll go on stage and speak Spanish and all of that crap?
Hell no. I think he's gonna, because there's polling that says that 75% of the Hispanic Latino community don't want to be seen as something separate. They want to be seen as integrating into society. So if Ted Cruz gets up there and he's like, I'm the son of a Cuban immigrant. I am the American dream. And I believe that, coming together as people, we have all of these things. We can work together and make America great. Because he's also jumped on board the populism train. And I think the Republicans are going to dive into that, especially if Trump...
He did win Iowa.
What's that? Yeah, he was second, dude. He was second behind Trump.
Yeah.
So, and that's literally why I think that
that well against Trump is impressive.
Yeah, that's why I think that that's how much harder would it have been to run an old raggedy white woman in the identity politics world, regardless of what you believe and or think about Ted Cruz? If you know that there are a ton of people that will vote for somebody that sounds like them. I mean, that's why Beto O'Rourke got so many votes in Texas, right? Mm. People thought he was Mexican.
But that was against Ted Cruz.
Right. But people thought he was Mexican. And you have a ton of Mexican...
O'Rourke, the Irish skater boy.
Yeah, so people Beto, because he called himself Beto, they thought he was Mexican, and there's way more Mexicans than Cubans in Texas. So if you ran, old raggedy Hillary Clinton against Ted Cruz for the presidency, if Trump hadn't gotten all the free press and all this kind of stuff, how the Latino population is like half of California and 30% of the country. How many of them do you think would be like, you know what? I'm gonna vote for the guy with the last name of Cruz. He's Hispanic.
How many will vote for identity over how many would vote for somebody like Crenshaw, who is a proven war hero?
I agree, but that plays well to you and me, because what I see happening is the 2024 campaign is when Crenshaw could run for Texas Senate, and then you put him in the Senate, and then you give him more time, and then he's going to be somebody later down the road, because he's only in his 30s, right?
Right?
So,
oh my god, yeah, he's like 35, I think.
Yeah, so
Maybe he's not even that old.
You get him in the Senate. Texas will most likely always and forever love a war hero, even the Hispanics. And you'll have now transitioned him up into that, and then because that's that re-election year, and you let Ted Cruz take the ticket, and then you put Kristi Noem, so you have a woman, because that's become like Republicans got more of the women vote than the Democrats did this election.
That's ridiculous.
They just,
Dan Crenshaw 36, by the way.
Yeah. So you run Kristi Noem, because she's a pretty good MAGA-ite, or you put Tim Scott as his VP.
Right.
So please tell me how, if the Republicans run a Hispanic and a black guy, the Democrats are really going to get away with calling them racist. I mean, they're still going to. But how well is it actually going to play over? You're still going to get a lot of black dudes that are going to be like, all right, I'm going to vote for the black guy just to have another black president.
Yeah.
How
exactly are they going to get away with the worse than Trump argument against basically anybody up and coming, including Dan Crenshaw?
Well, I mean,
I still think Crenshaw is viable. I don't disagree with anything that you're saying, but I still think that Crenshaw is definitely a strong possibility.
I think in the 2030s he's going to be the president.
I think he'll be stronger then, but I don't think that means that he's not capable now.
I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you, but
president that the Republicans have.
Yeah, but I think it's smart
to go first.
I mean, I think it's a smarter play for them to let him get into the Senate. He's super popular. He's super popular in Texas. Let him get into the Senate in Texas and help keep Texas red by having this, very moderate, very, war hero. He's very he's got the eye patch. He's got all this stuff. Let him
Saturday Night Live appearance.
Yeah,
so
let him continue to be a presence, and then when Ted Cruz and Tim Scott, or Ted Cruz and Kristi Noem destroy the race narrative, and people start voting based on policy instead of race, then later on you run Crenshaw.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think is the.
I see it either way.
I mean, that's what I think is the smartest play. Trump made all of these gains, and the Republicans made all these gains with minority voters this year, right? You have got to take that opportunity. You have to. Mm-hmm. You have to run Ted Cruz, Ted Cruz is the most popular Republican outside of Trump. He is. He's the most popular Republican outside of Trump. And he's the son of a Cuban immigrant.
Grabber, if he goes on Crowder, he won Iowa. He had that podcast that was super popular. He is the biggest power name for sure.
Yes.
Especially because he was non-politically established and won a Senate race and then almost won presidential primary. Like, he's not a career politician in anyone's eyes.
Yeah, so LA County had 200,000 more votes for Trump this year than last time. So that's the Hispanic vote going for Trump.
Now Trump will be campaigning for Cruz.
Yeah, so imagine. So I think Trump's role, if he loses, is going to be kingmaker. Right? He is incredibly popular in the Republican Party. So if you have...
By far.
If you have Ted Cruz being the face with Trump running around and, doing these rallies to support him, Ted Cruz dominates. Because think of all the people right now that didn't want to vote for Biden and Kamala Harris, because Kamala Harris is going to run in 2024. Mm-hmm. Think of all the people that just didn't like Trump. Right? I have a buddy. He's half black. His mom's white. His mom voted for Biden. He voted for Trump. He's a dude in the Navy, right? And he was talking to his mom about why, and he said, it's basically the Middle Eastern peace stuff. And his mom was like, well, I voted for Trump, for Biden for my kids and my grandkids. And he looks at her because his sister's in the Army, he's in the Navy, and he's like, oh, so you want your grandkids to grow up without parents? And his mom's response was, well, you're just racist. So there's a good, solid number of people, in my opinion, that it's going to be very, very hard for them to go to call Ted Cruz or Tim Scott, or a combination of them on the party ticket. I think Ted Cruz is the most likely if they're going to be playing some kind of party chess, because you can have Ted Cruz not rerun for the Senate and run for president, and have Dan Crenshaw run for the Senate, and then you replace a popular dude with another popular dude with name notoriety. And then Ted Cruz in my thing presumably wins.
What about another issue that I think is definitely being underplayed right now, and I don't even think is going to be played up appropriately by the media next election? The anti-Christian narrative against Ted Cruz. What do you think is going to happen with that?
I think you're going to see a big counter reaction of people going, dude, come on. Because it's a very small it's a very small vocal minority that are really like anti-Christian. It's the super tribalists that really go that, because like you even have like right now, Joe Biden gets up there and is like, I'm a good Catholic. Nancy Pelosi.
And no one believes
like I pray for Trump. Yeah, but I don't think that's going to play over well if they try and attack him, because they didn't play over well when they tried to attack Amy Coney Barrett. Right.
Right. I think it might be almost along the same lines of the racial thing, where they play the race card so hard and they think that it's just in the bag for them. And then they realize that there's I would say the recently religiously awoken, people like me and tons of other people who are, the typical Jordan Peterson fans who grow up religious but are kind of ideas because religion is being framed in a different light on the right now than it used to be. So
let's
I think
take a step back.
A giant population of people who might be very strongly against the Democratic attacks against religious people.
Yeah, and a lot of them come from south of the border. The Hispanic community is heavily Catholic. It's very heavily Catholic. Now, if you start an open assault on Ted Cruz for being Catholic or Christian, whatever the hell he is, I think he's Catholic. You potentially
not Catholic.
Okay. You potentially piss off all of the Hispanic community. And I think the shift in the Hispanic community voting patterns, especially in like South Texas, where the one county that's 97% Hispanic that went for Hillary Clinton by like 40 points last time, was almost 50-50 this time.
Yeah.
And that's why I go, like, I hate the identity politics, but I really think in order to beat identity politics, you have to crush its narrative, and they need to do that by running Ted Cruz. Like, I am so like attached to the idea, regardless of if Trump wins this time or not, that Ted Cruz runs in 2024 and destroys that narrative, that it's ridiculous.
Yeah. I definitely see him as the most likely front runner, because obviously in 2016 he came so close against the most dominant political force we've ever seen. And now how he's positioned himself with the
MAGA crowd.
Yeah, the MAGA crowd, the alternate media crowd, people like us who don't trust the typical media journalists who watch things on YouTube.
Yeah.
I think he is by far the strongest positioned candidate.
Well, I mean, the left doesn't really know how to deal with him. What do they attack him on?
What do they say he's worse than Trump?
Yeah, like I think with Trump they played their final card with all of this stuff. I really do. like I don't think the demographics is destiny thing that the alt-right and the alt-left both all agree on. Well, actually, the alt-right and just the generic left all agree on, like, oh, the more Hispanics we bring in, the more, you know, we're gonna guarantee to win, right?
Yeah, and that's what I've been saying for a long time too. It's like, I don't think that ideas are that hard to change compared to voter demographics. Like, I think you can actually outpace voter demographic shift with just telling people good ideas, and then truth will always win.
Yeah, I just think the problem with the left is that they get people sunk into these welfare programs designed to keep people entrapped, that they're going to be able to, you know, that you're going to be able to shift people out of it. But I think this particular election is very, very, you know, telling of what the Republicans are going to do in the future, because you notice that as soon as it came out that, like, oh, wow, you know, all these minorities like really love the populist thing. Lindsey Graham came out, who's been, you know, before Trump was like very much an ardent, normal Republican, and then still it took him a long time to turn around. He's like, yeah, we're gonna go populist, guys. I think we need to continue with the populist message.
I just can't wait for Lindsey Graham to figure out that he's secretly gay.
Oh God, he looks like it. Well, I hope, like, I'm conservative, but I hate Republicans. You know, I really do hate Republicans. They're giant fucking panty waist pussies.
I got a few that I like, but it's a short list. You know, it's Cruz, Crenshaw, Hawley. Slightly sympathetic towards Lindsey Graham because he's fairly vocal.
I also like I obviously like Cruz.
Cruz.
Like, you saw Tucker Carlson bring the Republican senator from Indiana on, and that dude was just a, you know, weak chin, panty waist bullshit garbageite that Tucker Carlson destroyed.
No, I didn't see that one.
Yeah.
Okay, what about the potential of Carlson as president?
No, he won't do it.
I don't think he'll run?
No, I also don't think you want him to run. I don't think he wants to run. I think he's got good ideas, but I think that dude's more powerful talking to people on TV, and I think he probably likes being on TV more than he likes being on there. And I also think as soon as, if Trump TV opens up, Tucker Carlson's jumping ship off of Fox.
Yeah, and I think he'll be the biggest name on Trump TV.
Yeah.
Besides maybe Trump himself.
Well, I don't think it's going to be called Trump TV. Two, yeah, and I don't think
Dumb News.
You know, it's going to be something like America News. You know.
Yeah.
Although I would not put it past Trump to call it Trump TV.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, and if it is Trump TV, you know good and well it's going to be massive. Because of the stuff that Fox has been doing and that Fox has been saying with some of their stuff, their ratings dropped by half in the last few days.
Now, do you think they would actually put it on TV, or would it be strictly online?
I think he's got enough money to put it on TV.
He could, but I don't know if it's worth that money compared to what you can do online and reach a larger audience for a lot cheaper.
Possibly, but you know, I still think that as much as legacy media is getting shredded, that there are enough people, especially older people, that still watch legacy media because they don't have the internet. That do it. I think they could do some kind of combination with the Blaze, or, you know, work with people that will both have live TV shows, and then they will put it on the internet. Because, you know, like CNN and Fox still get huge, massive views on YouTube.
True.
So One America News is on TV, and they're getting bigger and bigger. Newsmax is on TV, and they're getting bigger and bigger. What's that?
A lot of the YouTube views for the establishment news networks are because YouTube directs people's views towards them, like people like me,
right. Well,
all the channels that we watch, it'll immediately play a Fox News video afterwards, and I'm sure people who watch left-wing independent commentators, it will direct them to CNN. So, like, how much and how much is just because they're on auto?
You got to think: is Google gonna let Trump have a big presence on one of their platforms?
They can fucking try not.
Are they gonna let that? I don't think so, but I think he has enough money.
Banned from Twitter. If Trump got banned from Twitter, that's going to crush Twitter and open up the world to Parler.
Oh yeah, I have a feeling that Parler's already becoming the number one app on most stores right now. But I honestly,
the number one currently downloaded, but that doesn't mean it's the number one that people are using.
Oh yeah. You're right. I had the metric wrong, but like I think
downloading Twitter because they already have it.
No, you're not wrong, but it's growing, and that's kind of my point. I honestly think that these major networks, CNN, MSNBC, and all that stuff, they were dying in the digital age before Trump. And then they were riding the Trump bump incredibly. But what are all these people going to do during a Biden presidency? They're going to be trying to defend him continuously. But
they're going to be spinning narratives about how crazy people like we are for saying anything negative about Biden.
I know, but then they're going to have to sit there and defend the people, and even these liberals, right? If they're sitting there defending getting back in the TPP, how many of these people do you think are going to be like, I know this is bullshit. The TPP fucked us. If they start bombing again, and then the liberals, or even just uninitiated people are going, wait, so we're bombing people again, but didn't Trump sign peace agreements? Because they're still going to be inundated on Facebook by memes and all this shit of like peace agreements and whatnot, and it's going to have this like underlying psychological effect of all these newly politicized people that voted on the left going, wait, why is Biden sending troops to the Middle East? Why are we bombing these people? Why are my gas prices skyrocketing?
Like Gen Z that's probably going to turn right super hard pretty quickly.
Oh yeah, I mean, because they, I honestly think so. I think we're starting to finally see like the demographic effects of liberals not wanting to have kids.
Yeah, I think that might be the explanation of Gen Z, honestly.
I'm conservative. I have 4 children. I have liberal friends that got circumcised before they were married. I mean, not circumcised, vasectomies before they were married.
Yeah.
Anyways, any final thoughts on this election before we open up to open discussion?
Major political shifts are going to be happening in the future. This is just a taste.
Personally, I am not sure which outcome is the best between Trump winning the lawfare victory or Biden ending up just winning because there's not enough court pressure to overturn the votes. I don't know what'll be the best victory. I don't think we're in for a particularly good 4 years either way.
I think the best case scenario for America is GOP has the Senate, Biden has wins the presidency, but Trump goes down in such hot flames that it destroys the Democrats, because it's very possible with what we're saying, like if the Supreme Court makes rulings on the election system and then all of these states have to comply in the future and they don't get to have rigged political systems anymore. I have faith and optimism that both of the Senate seats in Georgia that are going up for a runoff will be Republican. It'll be 52-48 there, and the House is going to be very, very close. And all these politically awakened people are going to realize that they were lied to, and that we're dropping more bombs, and that that we screwed up. And then there's going to be a major rubber band effect, and the Republicans ride the populism narrative to the future because of the popularity of Trump.
So I think it's say that.
No, you go.
I think it's safe to say that we're probably going to have a Biden win. I think it's hard to bet against as much as we would love a Trump win, even if there's some negative circumstances that come out from that. I think it's most likely that we're looking at 4 years of Biden, and more likely than that would be 6 months of Biden and 3.5 years of Kamala Harris.
Two years of Biden, that way they can try and run Kamala Harris twice.
Do you think they go for a 10-year Kamala? I was wondering about that too.
That's what I think is going to happen.
Potential. If Joe can live for 2 years.
I think
what responsibility?
I don't think he's going to do shit. I think it's going to be all his cabinet running everything.
Well, obviously, he doesn't have a capable brain.
But
my point is, what responsibility do we have to protect what we need to protect? What do we need to do?
Go out and make sure that the GOP turns MAGA instead of Bush.
So it's like Tea Party 2.0 is MAGA Party.
Yeah, is MAGA Party.
Instead of early 2000s neocon.
Yeah, take the neocons and the rhinos out of power. Like be politically active, get them primaried, go in and, be engaged in the political process. I think everybody who voted for Trump needs to go be engaged in the political process to make sure that the Republicans that are getting elected align with those values. Like that guy that won in Texas, that one congressman that was pushing votes for Biden needs to get ran out of office next time. He needs to get ran out of office this time. So that's what I
figure
think.
out where he's from.
Yeah, that's really what I think needs to happen, and then I think everybody needs to continuously be on the push for election reform to make it so that legal votes are cast and people aren't having their votes suppressed. There's got to be a balance between the two instead of just a balance to like, oh, sure, no voter suppression in one particular way while not making it so that legal votes get cast.
How do we have a candidate reform where we stop having these bullshit corrupt individuals who are willing to do things like change votes towards themselves, but every other vote is changed towards a Democrat? Like, how do we know people who we actually want to vote for?
I mean, you be active in the political process. That's pretty much it. You literally be active in the political process. And that's what I think people need to start being. Then, there's no reason why everybody hates Nancy Pelosi, but she wins over a different Democrat in her district.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Nancy Pelosi.
I heard earlier that she might not have the votes to win re-election as Speaker of House.
Well, yeah, especially if Republicans get like 210. There are enough centrist Democrats that'll be like, I will vote for a Republican over you because I lost. I had to vow to my people to not let Nancy Pelosi be the Speaker of the House again.
Yeah, that could be an interesting shift. Watch it be
AOC. I don't think. No, because the centrist Democrats hate AOC.
Yeah, I know.
What I think is going to happen. Well, I mean, I honestly think Nancy Pelosi gets the speakership again. I think she's going to absolutely harangue people, and it's going to piss off a bunch of voters. She's not the kind of woman to step down.
I can't wait to watch this shit show for the next couple years.
Yeah, and then I think
find her with a bullet wound in her head and a fucking bunker with Ava Braun, but yeah, she won't give up power.
And in 2022, we're going to see Republicans dominate the House.
This feels like a Carter situation that's eventually going to turn into a Reagan. So.
Oh yeah, because it's just like they didn't like Nixon. Okay.
Yeah, you might not be wrong. So who's the Reagan then? Is that Cruz?
Ted Cruz. Oh, Ted Cruz. I don't know. I guess I'm just so hopped up on Ted Cruz. I'm a little bit.
Because Reagan had Barry Goldwater back in '64. He was the father of the conservative movement and all that. You could say that's like the equivalent of Trump. And then Ted Cruz is Reagan 2.0.
Yeah.
I can see that.
Well, I mean, I think Trump's legacy is gonna be just absolutely astounding in the future.
Yeah.
I mean, it's because I don't think we're in for much Senate shift in 2022. I'm looking it up because you have the left coast. Well, actually, maybe. So, goddamn it, Ballotpedia. So you have the left coast, everybody there, Nevada, Arizona, Colorado, and then you have like the deep south, except for Mississippi, Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Iowa, Missouri, Kansas, Oklahoma, the Dakotas, and then like Vermont, New Hampshire, New York, Connecticut, Maryland, Hawaii, and Alaska. That's all the stuff. So the only place I see like there being any real change is possibly Nevada. And maybe, you never know, like if New Hampshire and Vermont voted Republican in their local elections this time, there's a high possibility that they could vote for Republicans in 2022 if Biden sucks.
Maybe New Hampshire, but wasn't Vermont like incredibly blue?
Yeah, no, they voted for a Republican governor this go round.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And then
This is a strange election.
And then Arizona could also be up to be flipped back.
Right, from Mark Kelly.
Yeah. God, I hate that Arizona is so infected by. I think you're going to see a lot of Arizona people that realize, oh my God, we went blue and we voted for this guy. That in the next election, there's going to be even more people that are going to come out to vote.
A little bit of a swing back from the conservatives that thought Arizona was safe.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It could be.
Great discussion. Got anything else you guys wanted to talk about? Topics that you were in?
Not particularly. I'm still down for open discussion if everybody else is, but I have to take a little restroom break if you guys want to be going, or would you rather end it?
Oh, yeah, I got to take a piss too. You're good.
I can hold it up here for a little. You guys want to for a little bit? We can go on for another half an hour if you want.
I mean, we could also do the whole thing where we like end it and then start it over. It's just the shoot the shit cast.
I'll end it real quick and 1 second.
I have to figure out how to get on another fucking chat. This is gonna take.
No,
forever.
you just stay in here and he restarts the recording.
All right, guys. Thank you guys
I'm gonna run to the bathroom.
for episode 6 at this point. First episode of the Brocat.